Good morning. Good morning. I'm Mark Cave, and today, on Holocaust Memorial Day, this is our challenge.
On Holocaust Memorial Day, we remember
that we each have a choice
to indoctrinate
or educate,
to enslave
or liberate,
to persecute
or protect,
to spread fear
or share hope,
to suppress
or support,
to act with unspeakable cruelty
or incredible kindness,
to enable genocide
or inspire generosity,
to divide and segregate or unite and integrate, to stand back and look away,
or stand up and look forward,
to kill
or to save,
to hate
or to love.
Holocaust Memorial Day,
January 27th.
Be the light
in the darkness.
So, being a light in the darkness, and there's quite a bit of darkness at the moment at many levels. But as in all darknesses, there's always light if you look for it. And I'm joined this morning by two leading lights in their various fields, as I may call it that, to discuss and explain what being a light in the darkness means to them. First of all, Lord John Mann, who is the government's independent advisor on anti-Semitism. Hello, John.
Morning.
And secondly, Dr. Martin Stern MBE, a long-standing friend of the National Holocaust Museum, a survivor of the Holocaust and a prolific speaker. Good morning, Martin. I'd like to start with you, Martin, if I may. You're in that film as an example of light in the darkness. Could you tell us a bit about your experiences of what it means? Oh, you're on mute.
In 1944, in Nazi-occupied Amsterdam, I was a school kid at the age of 5. The form teacher had taken my class into the little school hall. It was a converted house. Everything was pretty small. She was sitting on a chair behind a table on the little stage, and she had told my classmates and I to line up against the wall, ready for some game. The door at the back of the hall opened. 2 young men walked in, and one said, "Is Martin Stern here?" And the teacher immediately answered, "No, he hasn't come in today." And there I was. At age 5, I didn't understand what was going on, and I put my hand up and I said, "But I have come in." And as these 2 young men were leading me out of the back of that hall, I looked around, and I'll never forget the ashen face of the teacher. They took me on the back of their bikes through Amsterdam, talking perfectly flawless Dutch. They were Dutchmen, not Germans. I was taken to a school which had been requisitioned as a holding center and interrogation center by the Nazis and questioned by an officer in the secret police arm of the SS, which had its headquarters there. And when I started asking him questions, when can I go back to school? When can I go home? He said that he had his orders. He was trying to make out that I should be sorry for his plight, that I should consider his position. And that man, I'm sure, knew exactly what he was doing and exactly what he was part of. I was then tricked into showing recognition of the man who, with his wife, had looked after me for 2 years near the centre of Amsterdam, as it happens round the corner from Anne Frank, although I didn't know that, of course. He was standing with his back to me. He'd been put there by the secret police. And I was taken past an open door. And when I showed recognition, that's what they wanted. This guy and his wife had looked after the son of a Jew for 2 years, very near the center of Amsterdam. It had been announced that people who helped Jews escape arrest would be treated like Jews. And although people didn't know the whole story, they knew enough. These people did it anyway. My father, who as a Jew had to go into hiding, was hidden by a farming family near Amsterdam airport, who hid at any one time up to 70 Jews out of their deep Christian religious conviction that it was their duty to help the persecuted Jews. So even in my young life, there was plenty of example of people who risked their lives to be the light in the darkness. The man who'd had me in his house, together with his wife, died in Neuengamme concentration camp near Hamburg, horrifically. The farmer who hid my father and his son both died in concentration camps from what they did. They were lights in the darkness.
Thank you, Martin. They were a light unto nations, I might say. Okay, John, if I could just come to John now, who has spent his entire political career standing up for against injustice and if I may say, being very much a light yourself. But now that you have this newish role as the government's advisor on anti-Semitism, there's a lot to do, I'm sorry to say. But could I ask why you focused on football, anti-Semitism football, to begin with?
Well, my call in Parliament has always been for parliamentarians, like everyone else, just to do their little bit. If everyone does their little bit, we win. And always been involved in some way with football, in no particular big way, all my life. It struck me that the reach of football is far greater than anyone else and anything else in this country. And why shouldn't football do its little bit? And I chaired the FA's task force on anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in football some years ago. Have worked with the players on racism within football and tried to promote and assist what they're saying and the abuse that they get and the injustice. With anti-Semitism, if football does its little bit, it has a huge reach, and that's what we found. You see, the reach of football, the vitality of football, the colour of football, If a football club like Manchester United, like Liverpool, like Crystal Palace, like Chelsea, like Leeds, if they do something on anti-Semitism and put that out there, the reach is worldwide. Because there's boys and girls, adults as well, but particularly young kids, boys and girls in this country, all over the world, who wear those football shirts. And the badge of football is so powerful. And that's the difference that football can make. And we've seen it. We've seen it. Chelsea, the first club to really start work on anti-Semitism with the IRA definition and using that. I've seen the feedback that they've got. I've seen the change they've made to young kids who were spewing out racism one day at home and a few weeks later apologising to their football club, understanding the values, what it means to wear the shirt as, you know, a 15, 16-year-old supporter who was prejudiced but is learning from their club. Well, that reach is worldwide. And, you know, in today's day of memory and sorrow and respect, if football's doing its bit again. I mean, in the last few minutes, the English Football League has announced that it's taking on the IRA definition and going to use that as its work on anti-Semitism, following the lead of the Premier League.
Yes.
Where the Premier League clubs have done so. And
John,
Germany,
for the schools listening, would you mind just explaining what you mean by the IRA definition?
So the IRA definition is what 40 countries have put together, defining what anti-Semitism is, giving an explanation what it is. What I found in football, going around football clubs, was people wanted to do the right thing, but they didn't really know what it was about. Explaining to them why a white power symbolism on a football flag or a swastika on a football flag, what that really means, the hurt that causes, the damage that causes, the reputational risk, and how you can turn it around by, if you understand a hatred, then you can do something about it. And that's why, you know, Borussia Dortmund in Germany, a huge club, have just announced that they've taken on their work explaining anti-Semitism, using the IRA definition, to their partners in Yad Vashem. Well, that's 4 of the biggest companies in the world.
Fantastic.
Companies like Daimler, Volkswagen, Deutsche Bank, the German railways. And that is major in that reach of football. And so football should be standing up against all forms of racism and hatred. When it does, its reach is far bigger than any government or any other institution. And therefore, working with football is a real pleasure. I think it's football's duty. But I also think, you know, as I say to the clubs, it's your shirt, it's your badge. Let's define what pride in your club and your shirt is. And this is one small but important part of it.
Well, it's you make it very clear why it's it might be a small part, but it's a very good first part to start with. It's I've always thought football is a window to the world's soul. It's just so big a part of our lives. So that makes sense. Thank you for explaining it, John. Now, you mentioned that Chelsea Football Club were the first club in the world to adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. So I wanted to just hear from the football clubs themselves and had the opportunity to interview 3 or 4 people, starting with the chairman of Chelsea Football Club, Bruce Buck. And let's have a listen to what he had to say.
Hello, Mark. Nice to be with you.
Thanks for joining us. So I've got a few questions that I'd love to ask you. I think that the really amazing thing is that, of course, Chelsea was the first club in the world to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. Why?
Well, I think anti-Semitism is something where if you're going to fight it, if you're going to try and get rid of it, you need a proper definition of it. because if you just go around and ask 20 people what anti-Semitism is, I think you'll get more than 20 different answers. So we thought it was important to adopt the definition. It's, I think, 38 or 40 words. It's pretty straightforward and pretty clear, and that enables us to fight something that we can really get our hands on.
How have you managed to inspire the traditional supporter base, the traditional staff base, to come along for the journey in the Abramovich era?
Well, I think we all recognize the power of sport, and maybe even more importantly than sport generally, the power of football. It's the most important sport in the world. Millions, maybe billions of people are talking about it and watching it every single day. And sport and football enables us to get your attention and his attention and her attention. And that relates to the supporters in Mitcham, and that relates to the supporters in Miami. And once you've got their attention, then your efforts have to be focused to giving them the right message, to educate them in the right way, which you're an expert at. And that's all we're trying to do for our fans that are around the corner and for our fans around the world, is to get their attention and give them the right message. And it seems to be working at least a bit.
Well, I only really have one more question for you, which is not, are you going to win the Premiership this year? Although, please God. It's simply, given that the theme is for Holocaust Memorial Day this year is about being a light in the darkness, standing up and making a difference. Just be nice to know, who do you personally admire, inside or outside of football, for being a light in the darkness?
Well, I admire a lot of people. I guess just focusing on football, and even more narrow, focusing on anti-discrimination activities, I guess I could mention two people. One is Herman Ousley, Lord Ousley, who is an immigrant, I believe, from the Caribbean, who has pretty much invested his whole life when he was working for councils, when he was in the government, on anti-discrimination activities. And around 1992, shortly after the Premier League was formed, in conjunction with a couple of other football people, he formed an entity called Kick It Out, which has been fighting discrimination for 25 years. And I think he was probably the first one that explained to me that it's all about education. And he's now recently retired from Kick It Out, and that organization will continue. But that's been the key organization in fighting discrimination in football for 25 years. The other person I want to mention, I guess, is John Mann, Lord Mann, who I've only known for a couple of years. And I guess we would, a former member of parliament, I guess now we would call him, I don't know what his official title is, but he's the anti-Semitism czar for the government.
Yes, the independent advisor to the government on anti-Semitism. And
he has also done, I think, an amazing job for a long time, but certainly for the 3 years or so that I've known him. So I guess those are the two that I would mention to you today.
Well, good choices and inspiring men. And John, of course, is with us this morning. So everyone will get to see why you mentioned him. Bruce, really good of you to join us and good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure.
John, I promise you, I didn't set that one up completely and utterly off his own bat, but that was nice. Now, I thought then we should also ask some of the players themselves their views on the subject. And I should say that of all the schools that have been participating in our football learning program since September 2020, there's 15 schools from around the country. 8 of them are you'll see a little bit later on. But given that some of you are in Loughborough, and Nottingham in the Midlands and some in London, we thought who better than to ask two players from Leicester City and from Chelsea, respectively. So these were guys that unfortunately they had busy match schedules, as they always do. So I had to talk to them yesterday, and here's what they both had to say. First of all, James Justin from Leicester City, and then Callum Hudson-Odoi from Chelsea. So, morning, James. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, everybody.
What examples of racist darkness have you witnessed or experienced personally?
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. I guess the main thing about it is the social media nowadays, that anyone can say what they want on social media, and sometimes, obviously, the comments are a bit harmful and racist, I guess. So that's probably the main thing personally that I've experienced, and I'm sure many other players have experienced as well.
You have enjoyed fantastic success as a Premiership defender and under-21 England player. What is your advice to young people striking out in areas where there's still not enough diversity, or where they may face discrimination on the grounds of their identity?
I think the main thing is, for me, is don't be scared. I mean, 99% of people are great people and are welcoming to every background and every ethnicity. So don't be scared, and just try and be social and connect with these other people to understand what they may be going through.
Thanks so much, James, for joining us, and good luck with the game tomorrow.
Thank you. Nice speaking to you all.
I'm delighted now that we're joined by a player in fine form at Chelsea Football Club, Callum Hudson-Odoi. Callum, thanks very much for joining. How are you doing?
No problem. It's all good. No worries.
Good. Welcome. So we've got three students here with us, as you can see, from Loughborough High School up in the Midlands. We've got Alicia, Iola, and Sophie. We've just got one question each to put to you, if they may. So I'm just going to ask them to do that and get out of the way. So,
that's no problem.
Thank you. Alicia, what was your question for Callum?
In the stand-up programme, we have explored being upstanders to prejudice and racism. In 2019, Chelsea lodged a complaint against racist abuse towards you. Are clubs and players, especially after the summer, becoming more powerful upstanders against racism? Have you seen a change during your time as a player?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like Chelsea are doing a lot to try and stop racism coming into football as a whole. I feel to myself that I feel like a lot of players are doing as much as they can as well to get racism out of football. But also the club as well are doing a big change, making a big change on it, and making sure that we try and get racism as quick as possible out of football, because none of us want to be racially abused. At the end of the day, we all like the sport of football. We all like watching it. We all like playing it. So we don't like to hear stuff or see stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable. So I feel like Chelsea are doing really well in that sense of trying to improve on it. But as I said, it's not just one club that can do it. I think everybody has to keep pushing and hoping that racism will soon come out of football and action will take place if it does happen.
Yes.
Okay,
Does that answer your question, Alicia?
Yes.
Did I answer it? Did I answer it good? No problem.
Sophie, what's your question for Callum?
You have experienced fantastic success, becoming the youngest player to debut for England in a competitive match, and have spoken out about the importance of your Ghanaian roots in helping you develop. We are working with students from diverse communities across the country. What advice do you have for young people discovering their own family and community identities?
I feel like that's very important. I feel like to myself that you would like to know your background a lot and find out where your family were born, where they were brought up from, how everything was for you, how everything was for them before you were born. Do you know what I mean? So for myself, I've always tried to look as much as possible into my family's background, whether it's my mum or dad, and seeing how they were when they were in Ghana or how things were over there. I even tried to visit Ghana a couple of times myself just to see how things are over there. And I've met a lot of family over there. So I feel like if I was speaking to anybody and telling them about their own identity or trying to find out stuff about themselves, I'll definitely say it's important. I feel like you would want to know things that happened before you were born or what's happening even now. And I feel like the older you get, the more wiser you get and the more you will know anyways. But I think that asking your family or asking if it's your parents, if it's your grandma, granddad, whoever it is that knows a lot about your background roots, I think it's the best thing so you understand your family much more than you do now. So I would say it's very important to find out background knowledge and hopefully that they give you as much detail as you need to find out about your family roots.
Thank you.
Thank you. Iola, what's your question?
This is a time of real uncertainty and pressure for individuals and in football. Why do you feel it's important that we reflect and remember the effects of the Holocaust? Why is it important today?
I feel like this is really important that we don't let the story die. I think to myself that we've got to keep it alive. We don't want the Holocaust repeating itself or what happened years ago, do you know what I mean? So for myself, I feel like we've got to keep everything going. We've got to make sure that it never repeats, it never happens again. And especially in the circumstances that we are in now, I feel like things are not easy for anybody at this moment. The pandemic has taken a big effect on everybody around the world. So I feel to ourselves that if you can even educate yourself a bit more about the Holocaust and understand certain things about it, then we will understand that we don't want to go back into that predicament of it happening again. And we will keep ourselves far away from trying to not happen again. So I feel like it's definitely very important that we don't do anything to make it happen again, firstly, but also make sure that the story stays alive. And I said that Chelsea have done really well in that sense of trying to educate us as much as possible and letting us know what happened before and ways we can prevent it happening again. So, yeah, as I say, they've done really well on that as well.
Thank you.
That's really good. Really good. Is that the answer you're looking for, Iola?
Yeah, thank you.
That's really good. That's really good, Callum. Thank you.
No problem.
I just wondered, because you mentioned the pandemic, which is a pretty dark time for all of us right now. Is there somebody who you admire as being a bit of a light in the darkness?
For myself, my role models are all my family members. I feel like they give me the advice that I need every day to get better at what I'm doing, but to make me more mature as well and understand life better. But also, I would say I had a chat before with Paul Cannavale about everything, about how he went through stuff at racism, about football and everything. And I feel like he understood exactly what was going on back then, and he was trying to make a change. And obviously, he's had a big influence on myself to understand that we need to make a change in this day and age as well, because I feel like racism comes on a lot, and I feel like we need to do as much as possible to keep changing it.
Callum, thank you very much indeed for your time. That was
no problem. Thank you everyone for your questions as well. See everyone later. Take care. Okay.
I should explain that the chap that Callum Hudson-Odoi was referring to, Paul Cannavale, who you saw on the screen there, was Chelsea's first black footballer and endured years of abuse wherever he went in stadia. But the club has taken him under his... So, morning, James. Now, I'm really pleased to say that we've actually got somebody from the world of football able to join us live, and that is Chloe Morgan, who is Crystal Palace women's goalkeeper. Hi, Chloe. I just want to let people know that a bit about your background, because it's so impressive. A solicitor, and you were one of the Football Blacklist 2020's nominees, and this is what was written about you. Chloe is a proud vocal campaigner, relentlessly breaking down barriers in the women's game with both black representation and LGBTQ inclusion. Difficult to imagine how the Palace stopper finds enough hours in a day. Being a lawyer, a coach for Gold Diggers FC, and taking up a role as a board apprentice at Women in Football. I think John, Chloe, has some questions for you.
Thank you.
Oh, wow, Chloe, with a CV like that. I wondered, I mean, you're a professional player, you've got all these other interests and attributes, and you're a real role model. What's it like to be a role model for so many young girls out there?
I think it's very unusual. I think, growing up, it's a role I never intended to really have. I think my focus initially was getting into law, and with the career that I've had with Spurs and going into the WSL and now with Palace, it's kind of taken me a little bit by surprise, I suppose. But I think in this kind of role, you do feel a sense of responsibility. Now using the platform that I do have, my main ambition really is to try and create positive change. So the next generations don't see the same kind of issues that we experience in terms of inequality and discrimination now. I mean, I don't want to be having the same conversations with, my future sons or daughters, perhaps in, 10, 15 years time, and saying that the situation is still the same. So I think for me, that's a big motivator. And I think really, when you look at the kind of young girls and boys around there now and social media and how that's progressed, there's such an amazing awareness now from young people about how they can be more active and how they can use their voices. And I think that's incredible. And I know for me now, in the position that I'm in, I think we have a responsibility and a duty really to support those young voices and to make sure they're heard and to make sure that people realise and understand that they're important.
I think we're going to need to get you into Parliament to have knocked some sense into some of the people in here at some stage when it's possible in the future. But can I ask you as well, thinking of today's theme on Holocaust Memorial Day, I mean, who do you see as a light in the darkness in tackling racism and discrimination today?
I mean, there are so many amazing individuals and organisations about at the moment, and in my field in football and particularly in women's football, the organisations that I work with who are not just campaigning for change, but also changing things on a grassroots and fundamental level. So there are women and men out there who are being role models, who are breaking boundaries, who are making sure that the younger generation know that there are people to look up to who look like them. So they might not be the biggest TV personalities or have the most followers, but there are people who are making a difference on the ground. So organisations like Goals for Girls, Girls United, obviously women in football as well. Working with them, I see how much goes on behind the scenes in terms of trying to make a difference and highlighting discrimination. But me personally, and how the light that I find in any kind of dark moments is always going to be my incredible family and my incredible friends, because they always have my back and I love them for it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Chloe, thank you so much for taking time out to join us. Really appreciate it, and wish you a successful rest of the season.
No, thank you very much for having me. I've really, really enjoyed the discussion.
Great. John, I don't know what to say other than thank you. Please keep up the amazing work that you're doing. Really thrilled that you're able to join us this morning, and look forward to fighting the good fight with you from here on in. Thank you.
Welcome.
Now then, it being Holocaust Memorial Day, although we are online, which is difficult, that is part of the darkness itself, not being together physically. But we do have all of you wonderful schools who took part, or have been taking part in the learning programme since, as I said, last September. I should have said before, by the way, that those very eloquent interviewers of Leicester City were students from JCOS, so thanks to them, and thanks to the girls from Loughborough High. To try and be reflective, if we can, in this virtual environment, I wanted to introduce a good friend, Rabbi Eli Levin, who is a rabbi, obviously, and a cantor at South Hampstead Synagogue in London. And he's going to lead a candle lighting with the schools that are taking part. And I'm just going to shout out who those schools are. We have with us Loughborough High School. From Loughborough, we have 3 schools from London: Yavna College, Emmanuel College, and JCOS. From Nottingham, we have Dukeries, Colonel Frank Seeley. And from Leicester, we have City of Leicester and With Stanley. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm going to hand over now to Rabbi Eli to start off the proceedings.
Thank you, Mark. Today, we light a candle to commemorate those who perished in the Holocaust and other genocides. However, this is also a light which carries forward their legacy and the legacy of survivors, which is that the answer to hatred is not to hate, but to create peace. The Hebrew word shalom, peace, also means shalem, whole. When we are whole, when we can live together, then we have true peace. So this is a remembrance candle, which also lights up our future and reflects the spark inside each of us that empowers human beings to connect, to be peaceful, and to make the world a brighter place. Let's sing the song of peace in Hebrew. Please sing along. Shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. Oseh shalom Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Shalom, shalom.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you, Rabbi Eli. And thank you to all the schools for taking part. I should say that it would be great if you can try and take this spirit forward. Keep spreading that light. Please share the commemoration this morning. Please share the film that you saw at the beginning of the show. Really important that we make sure the light spreads not just on one day of the year. This is a daily task and a responsibility. It would also be great if you could send messages through the interface that I think you've been given. Message of thanks to people that for you personally, are your light in the darkness. I think the thing is on the screen now that says where to go to at menti.com. Please do that, and we'll collect all of those at the end of the program and spread them amongst you all afterwards, so everyone can see who else's role models and lights in the darkness are. We're drawing to a close now, and I'd like to end with Martin. Before I do that, let me just say a big and hearty thanks to our very dear friends at the Genesis Philanthropy Group, who have so generously supported this morning's event and the making of the Darkness and Light film. Thanks to Miri, in particular Miri Benchetrit and Marina Borowski. So, Martin, I thought it would be nice and fitting, if it's okay with you, to finish with some words from you, to ask what your message would be, perhaps, to everybody listening and to the young people in particular. I don't know if you wanted to mention Mrs. de Jong as another light, or something else, but the platform is yours.
Mark, Mrs. de Jong was a lady in the prison town in which my one-year-old sister and I were incarcerated, and in which the vast majority of children ended up dead. The Holocaust Memorial Day is not just about Jews. The Nazis not only perpetrated
To everybody, I'm sure, that's listening, you are, to everybody at the National Holocaust Centre and Museum, who I don't think it's any exaggeration to say, love you. Please keep up the good work. I know you've been going through some hard times in your personal life yourself. You managed never to let it get in the way, and you're always thinking of everybody else. It's humbling, and I'm grateful, and I thank you. Again, to thank you, everybody else. Thanks for being involved. Thanks for getting involved. And above all, thanks for staying involved. Spread those messages. Bye for now.